Jess Henry and the Crazy Train, and we'll just jump right in. Jess Henry and the Crazy Train by J. Wilburn. She recited the names, all 13 of them, in order without pause. They echoed through the metal hull of her body and off the stone walls of her dry, cold cave. Every name, every single boy and girl she had cared for, she said them one after the other, like a single phrase of a spell. I may go from a spell here. Excuse me. I don't know if that makes a huge difference, but I think it may run smoother for a reader. So here are the names: Nolan, Hunter, Sylvia, Cameron, Connor, Christina, Leslie, Dream, Lupe, Santiago, Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade. It was the order in which they had been put under her care. I don't know if that's right, because they aren't all under her care. She took care of some of them after all the bad stuff started to happen. The order in which they, say, found themselves. Again, that is still passive voice, but I think it's fine here. Hey, man, thanks for jumping in. We're just getting back into Jess Henry and the Crazy Train and seeing if I can edit this into an award-winning story of sorts, I guess. All right, it was the order in which they found themselves under her charge and the order in which they died. The names weren't magic, but they heated her insides faster, which might be as close to magic as an automaton could get. Oh, okay, that's fine. I'll read slowly for you. The names weren't magic. Again, we got there. Okay. Her gears turned, and the clockwork within her sent power out through her metal limbs. There were more advanced models than her, but Jess Henry was the only one in these reaches. Do I want to advance that a little bit? The only being of flesh and metal. Flesh or metal. But Jess Henry was the only being of flesh or metal in these reaches to deal with this problem. It was a cold morning, so she said the names twice more, back to back. Nolan, Hunter, Sylvia. Part of the Henry family, her first family. They had grown into teens before the plague. She had moved on to another family by then. Sylvia cried when Jess left. She cried again after her brothers died, and she choked to death on the fluid in her lungs while in Jess's arms. Again, I like that phrase. I hope it communicates what I want it to, that she had moved on to other families, but at some point after the plague started, she had come back to check on them. So I don't know if that comes through in that part, but I try to trust the audience with the story and not be too plain with things, I guess. Cameron, Connor, Christina of the Carter family died of the plague too. Leslie, Dream, both girls died from the mech uprising as Jess tried to hide and protect them. Lupe, Santiago died in the fire caused by the mechs from the train. Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade had no parents but thought they didn't need a fucking governess bot. I'm going to change that to nanny bot. I think governess bot will be the official name and nanny bot will be sort of the nickname that these robots get. Jess took care of them anyway, but couldn't protect them from the crazy train either. Now, essentially, that paragraph is all the backstory we get. So, all the bits and pieces sort of harken back to this idea that these are the children she tried to protect and that they all died at some point, either from a plague or some kind of robot versus human uprising. And in that moment, I guess that's all the space I gave myself to tell that part of the story. The engine, it may also still be too much. That may be more than an editor or a publisher would tolerate, but we'll see if it works. The engine whistled through the mountain passes as it tore its way along the tracks that had been out of use and forgotten for years. The mournful howl of that effing train's whistle echoed around her still in the cave. Nolan, Hunter, Sylvia, Cameron, Connor, Christina, Leslie, Dream, Lupe, Santiago, Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade. Take Taking up her hammer, she fled from the cave and ran along the ties between the rails. She closed the distance on the terrible thing closing on her. At the next curve, with mountain on one side and forest descending the slope on the other, she stopped in the pale winter sun. The light danced off the ID plate attached low on the curve of her left side. Her jointed fingers traced the engraved numbers, letters, and symbols there in a way that was almost absently human. Xeno Mace Solutions. Then the company's logo was below that in a pattern of interconnecting gears. Governess Models 13, Lot S-SN 13-J.355. Little Sylvia Henry, learning to read under the governess bot's tutelage, traced the designation numbers. Confusing the numbers for letter, little Sylvia read Jess and called the bot that from then on. She even screamed the name over and over as she died, a young woman in Jess's arms. Nolan Hunter, little Sylvia Henry, Cameron Connor, Christina, Leslie Dream, Lupe Santiago, Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear Blade. All right. She lifted the hammer, a solid metal thing, forged as one whole piece, with no loose connections and no weak points, onto her shoulder. The drum of the hammer was as big as the shell of Jess's head and just as hard. The damn whistle from the oncoming train, the crazy train as Pooh Bear called it, echoed through the stony landscape like a cry of war and pain. She went to work on the tracks. Okay, I need to fix this. Swinging low from side to side, she knocked the rails loose from the spikes. A stubborn rail would waver but not come loose. Well, I need to be clear there. Say occasionally. Usually aren't supposed to solve problems with adverbs, but I'm going to give myself a break here anyway. All right, occasionally a stubborn rail would waver but not come loose. This threw off her rhythm and her timing. Time was something she lacked as the vibrations rose under her metal feet. She recited the 13 names again in a whisper, almost unaware she was doing so. Then she knocked those stubborn rails off too. Her eyes raised and lost focus as they tried to ratchet in and out on the distant mountains. A dark smoke trailed in a plume around the next curve. She surveyed the damage and knew it wasn't enough. She had seen the mechs repair far worse than this. They were destroyers by nature at this point. She was a caretaker by design, but playing the role of destroyer out of necessity. But they would fix the rails in order to get to their next victims. There weren't many humans left. She shouldered her hammer and collected the cast-aside rails. She could throw them down the mountain, but that wouldn't be enough either. One by one, she looped them behind the bigger trunks of trees. Okay, let me be clear here. One by one, she looped them in her metal hands behind the bigger trees just down the slope and bent the rails around into Sherman bow ties. Okay. Let me split that up here. All right. One by one, she looped them in her let me be specific. The rails in her metal hands behind the bigger tree trunks just down the slope. All right, I'll stop there. All right, that makes more sense. Now, using the leverage of the tree's mass. There we go. Using the leverage of the tree's mass, she bent the rails around into Sherman bow ties. As she ran out of room on one tree, she'd move to the next largest one. The scream of the whistle was closer now. Up on the stretch of ties lacking their rails, she could see the dark engine coughing up greater clouds of smoke. The red eyes of the mechs along the flatbeds of the train glowed through the mists. All right, I need to describe the train more. That's one thing that's missing from this. So I need to kind of create this behemoth of a vehicle that's coming along. All right, let's say fins and spines of sharp metal. It's cold in this room. Fins and spines of sharp metal stuck out from the sides of the dark engine. They could have served no purpose but to induce fear. Alright, let me see if I can spell that correctly. There we go. They could have served no purpose but to induce fear. The light of fires showed through the vents as the train moved. Alright. Got a couple hundred words in tonight myself. There you go. See, last time you confessed to me that you had used me as an excuse to get away from writing, but a couple hundred words is closer to the goal, obviously. Are you writing on a novel? Are you doing short stories? What's your current whip? Light of fires showed through the vents as the train moved. Moved closer, moved on, moved along. All right. Let me. Is that enough? I don't want to overdo it. All right. Behind the metal beast. All right, short story. My goal is at least 6,000. Currently sitting at around 2,000. Okay. Do you know the story is going to be 6,000 words, or you just kind of feel that's where it is? Oh, fantasy, cool. I write. Obviously, I write a little bit of it. It's not exactly my wheelhouse, but I'm writing a lot more of it lately. I'm actually I wrote something for my son for Valentine's Day. That's a fantasy short story that I'll probably take a quick look at after this one, so that'll be like a bonus after we finish this story. All right, behind the metal beast, a coal car pulled along. No, I already used along. Behind the metal beast, a coal car rattled. I guess the answer is that is no. That's just an estimate of what I would like to see from it. It's not a bad number, especially if it kind of feels like the story's going to go that far. All right, behind the metal beast, the coal car rattled, heaped high with dusty black rock. The mechs behind the engine shoveled more and more into the hungry fire at the engine's core. All right, let me read through that and see if I got enough. I don't want to over describe, but I feel like I kind of didn't place anything on this engine. Up on the stretch of tracks like in the rails, she could see the dark engine, puffing up greater clouds of smoke. Fins and spines of sharp metal stuck out from the sides of the dark engine. I keep saying engine, but I don't know if there's a better word. They could have served no purpose but to induce fear. The light of fires showed through the vents as the train moved along. Behind the, let me say heat vents. It's not really a train term, but it'll do. All right, behind the metal beast, a coal car rattled, heaped high with dusty black rock. The mechs behind the engine shoved more and more into the hungry fire at the engine's core. The red eyes of, let's say, even more mechs along the flatbeds of the train glowed through the thin mists. that would have to do. Jess ran. She didn't rain. She ran. Jess ran past. Where am I there? Okay, Jess ran past her cave and climbed the loose rocks of the last slide beyond. Let's say landslide. Let's not be cute with trying to shorten it. The last landslide beyond. From the top of the heap, she turned to see sparks flying from the sharp wheels of the last bits of metal rail. As much as she was able, she hoped the whole damn thing would derail and kill itself upon the rocks tumbling down. As the weight of the train pulled up, that glimmer of hope left her. Even though it was too late, she calculated that maybe she shouldn't have kept going around the bend. The crazy train might have missed the threat. Here we go. It's bad when you have a typo that's another word and you got to figure out what you're actually trying to say. The threat. And not able to stop in time. All right. Before the dark train of death fully stopped. I've already used stop, so let's say halted. Halted. Let's say it's momentum. Trains are hard to stop. We need to at least make this look hard. All right. Before the dark train of death fully halted its momentum, the mechs, with their jagged joints and emotionless heads, jumped off and climbed down the slope. One by one, they bent the metal bow ties out straight again. Then they applied heat from their weapons and hammered the rails out true. She did not... I'll need to mention those weapons later, because there's a scene at the end where they need to have used them. She did not wait for them to start spiking the rails back into place. Jess recited the names again, too loud. A few mechs turned their glowing eyes down the tracks. Let's say in response to her voice. In response to her voice. All right. And we can spell two correctly. That word at least should be spelled correctly. All right. She used the hammer to knock loose the stones on top of the pile down the slope. With those gone, she attacked the fissures, widening them with brute force, and sent larger boulders tumbling down as well. When no good candidates remained, she broke away new rock to add to the growing pile below. I used below too much. Other paragraph, not too bad. All right, a few mechs stepped away from the repairs and marched toward the sounds of thunder. They raised their blank faces and hellish eyes to see the governess bot tearing down the mountain and covering the tracks ahead in a wall of rubble. They were close, but did not attempt to climb after her. They saw her lips moving, but let me get a little specific here. Let's say foil. They saw her foil lips moving, but could not make out the name she spoke over and over. The thunder covered everything as lightning flew with each impact of her dented hammer. The whistle blew again, and Jess paused. All right, I need a comma there because that is two complete clauses connected by and. The dark engine turned its wheels. Not pistons. What is that called? It's a something bar. Hold on. I'm going to jump on the internet real quick. All right, what is bar that connects train wheels? All right, coupling rod. That's the word I was looking for. All right, so I know what I'm doing. Let me come back in here. I want to say coupling rod went up and down. The dark engine turned its wheels. The coupling rods pumped up and down at a casual pace, delivering the slow drive into all the wheels. See, now everybody who did not watch this stream will think that I'm really smart and know the word coupling rod all by myself. Like I'm a train expert. The mechs watched her The mechs watching her started clearing the stone and rolling it down the hill. Rolling it down the hill piece by piece. Piece by piece. A few others did begin the climb toward her. Jess Henry did not wait for them as she ran down and along the tracks beyond the barrier she'd created. Rust fell from her joints. One of her knees started to squeak from the lack of lubricant and regular maintenance. There was nothing to be done, so she ran onward. The ruins of the town finally came into sight. Old scorch marks, missing roofs, let's say vines climbing walls, and clutter marked the places where people used to live. This part of town did not look well off enough for caregivers like Jess back when humans still ruled the earth. But Jess had helped children from these neighborhoods after the war began. She tried to help at least. All right, the whistle howled again. The blast was so long that she could hear it drawing closer. The only reason the damn train... Come on now, let's spell damn like an adult here. If you're going to cuss, do it right. The only reason the damn train was making that noise was to tell her, Jess Henry, that he was coming, and death followed with him. Nolan, Hunter, Sylvia, Cameron, Connor, Christina, Leslie, Dream, Lupe, Santiago, Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade. Jess struck. Got a lot of dropped letters here. Jess struck the street over and over again. She broke away what remained of the pavement. Then she destroyed the recessed rails. She kept going after that. The crazy train had more time to react and stop smoothly before the damage Jess had created on the edge of town. The mechs disembarked again. They started clearing the rubble and debris to see what repairs were needed. This town was long dead, but humans still lived and hid in the distance, so these machines were not done hunting. As the rubble shifted under them, a few mechs paused to see what was happening. Do they want to see what's happening to process? Because they are machines. Let's say they to process. And that is a much more magnificent verb than just seeing. To process what was happening. The rest droned on in their work until they all fell into the long, narrow pit. The machines took a deep, let me say trench instead of pit. That's a better description of what I'm talking about here. So she kind of banged out a trench trap there. All right. The machines took a moment to right themselves and clear the crumbs of asphalt from their joints. As they started to climb out with no signs of distress, the ground collapsed around them on both sides and buried them to their necks. They cleared themselves out with more haste this time, but not fast enough for the next avalanche. Let's say before the next avalanche. This collapse brought the ruins of houses down on top of them. Then water flowed from a broken pipe and washed over them in their grave. Now the mechs appeared frantic. Jess was sure they were incapable of fear, but she hoped for it as they submerged in her trap. Her only regret was they didn't have mouths to scream as their systems failed. It would be justice for all the children they had made scream. All right, let me have them use their weapons again. I'll also spell before correctly, just because I'm that good. All right. A couple flamethrowers. Popped off last bursts of heat before extinguishing. Alright, we said a couple, so let's make this a few. A few laser... they don't have laser guns, do they? A few laser torches. lit their beams briefly, but they did not cut anything before losing power. All right, that works great. All right, the crazy train blew its whistle again. This time Jess thought it sounded angry, maybe even afraid. All right. She could hope. She balanced on the busted pipe as it continued to pour water over the motionless mechs. Jess almost lost her balance twice as she carried her hammer over the pit to the train side of the destruction. The train blew its whistle in short, shrill bursts, like it was trying to startle. Let's say startle instead of scare. Startle. Like it was trying to startle Jess Henry into falling. The last blast sent flames into the air, lighting the strange scene. As she approached the engine, things changed. The train fell silent. She had never been this close before and saw the flames inside made the front grills appear like red eyes. That was the last thing her last three children... I don't want to say something besides last. That was the... Okay, it has to be the last thing. That was the last thing her final... It's not the best word, but I'll use it as a placeholder. That was the last thing her final three children had seen before they died. Nolan, she said, as she swung her hammer and knocked one of the grills back into the red fire. The glow grew brighter. Levers shifted inside, and the trains... I don't want to say it started to back away. The train's wheels spun backward on the rails, scratching for traction. See, that sounds better. And it's also closer to reality. Trains take a while to be able to move themselves. Hunter, she cried as she knocked one of the front wheels out of alignment. The train backed. Okay, what am I doing here? Alright. The train backed away a few inches anyway. Alright, so it's just beginning to gain traction. It's not like a car that can just shift into reverse. Little Sylvia Hunter, who named me Jess, she knocked the front wheel off its axle. Cameron, okay, let me bring back that coupling rod. A coupling rod clattered onto cracked pavement. Got to use it twice. Getting me motivated here, and I'm supposed to be done for the night. Oh no. It's okay to be done for the night. You can carry that motivation over. Of course, if you get fired up and want to start writing and no one in your house tells you to stop, I guess it's okay. Cameron, who loves science, she bent the other front wheels different directions. She bent the other wheels different directions and halted the crazy train's retreat. The whistle blew again. Connor, who loved his brother and sister more than himself, she knocked the whistle off its mount and it never blew again. Christina, who was too young to understand what was happening, she struck the boiler and dented it deep. All right, I don't need a quotation mark there. I actually saw that when I was editing the video last time. Leslie, who was afraid of the dark unless we sang, she struck again, carving the boiler into the center of the engine. Dream never stopped believing that everything would be okay even at the end. The boiler breached and steam erupted in three directions like a scream. Lupe was tougher than her years because she had to be. Jess destroyed the walls of the engine that held no engineer. Santiago was afraid of fire, and I could not protect him from it or you. She started beating the bolts. She didn't need to start beating the bolts. She just does it. She beat the bolts free of the plates. of the engine's outer plates. Now let's say it lost its scary fins and spines one after the other. Attempting to learn through osmosis. You never know. We pick up stuff everywhere. Evil Girl 7 was afraid to tell me her real name. The engine really did seem to cry out as the fires went dark inside. Let me have her do some more damage. She broke the hitch to the... Oh, let me make this a new paragraph here. I know I got a rhythm going with the names, but this will be all right. She broke the hitch to the coal car and broke it open, spilling the contents across the wet ground. There we go. Looking good. All right, Pooh Bear carried that ratty stuffed animal everywhere. She would not stop until every piece was broken away from every other. She wouldn't stop until every piece, let's say, of metal, because I've mentioned the coal now too. Metal was broken away from every other. Jess shouldn't have been heaving for breath, but she was running hot. Blade, he died, trying to save the others from you, and now you will kill no more. She stepped back and surveyed the scene. She waited for anything to dare to move, prepared to use her hammer against them. But all had fallen except for her. All right, I need to add one more thing. I'm going to use Jess. Well, I've used it on both sides. Considering the spilled coal, she hammered the pile, turning it to useless dust that no future train could ever burn. Alright, so now we have a power source for the train, and she's taking care of it. Considering the spilled coal, she hammered the pile, turning it to useless dust that no future train could ever burn. Jess Henry left the destroyed crazy train as a warning for any other mechs who dared to come this way. She walked around the washout she had created and continued west. There weren't many humans left, but there might be some, and she wanted them to know it was over. They might not accept her because she was metal too, but she was designed to care for others, and she had done the best she could. All right, I do like that. I think that story's solid.